Rolling camera. Mic check, 1, 2. YouTube friends, what's going on? David Lee back with a brand new video, and today we are talking about upscaling HD footage to 4K/UHD. Now, why on earth would you want to ever upscale something that's of a lower resolution to display to a higher resolution? Well, recently I was looking at a couple of different cameras for future needs, and specifically like cinema cameras, right? And a lot of them shoot in 4K, 4.6K, 5K and upwards. And even older cameras like the Canon C100, the Mark II, the Mark I, that have a 4K sensor that downsampled to 1080p. And it kind of got me thinking of an interesting topic to share with all you guys. And the reason why is because sometimes you might be in a situation where maybe you're low on cash and you can't afford to buy a 4K camera. Maybe it's the memory, such as the 1DX Mark II that I film on. It uses CF cards and CFast cards. The CFast cards are still pretty expensive, compared to like an SD card that you would find on an A7 III, a GH4, a GH5. And all that being said, I remember last year I filmed a wedding proposal video. And for me, weddings, I have a client that has wedding venues, so that's as close as to anything I get when it comes to weddings. I'm not a wedding filmmaker. There are plenty of them out there that are great and they're fantastic at what they do. But going back to the client who asked if I could do this wedding proposal for him, was a surprise thing, and I knew I wanted it to be delivered in two formats, two deliverables. One was 1080p that they can share easily on Facebook, and the other was 4K, something a little bit more, for people who really want like the full experience on a 4K display. So I shot the whole film with the Sony a7R Mark II in 4K, as well as the 1DX Mark II in 1080p. And 70% of that film was pretty much 1080p, 60 frames per second. And there was like 2 or 3 clips that was 1080p, 120 frames per second. But I upscaled all the 1080p footage, which again is the majority of the film, to UHD, so 3840 by 2160, and playing it back on my 5K iMac display, a 65-inch Samsung 4K display, 1080p displays. It honestly kind of looks all the same, but it looks good. And that's the main point here I wish to drive home to you guys, is it's okay to upscale your 1080p footage to UHD. Now, is that a reason to not buy a 4K camera? I don't think so, because eventually if you want to do anything that requires like 3D titling, 3D tracking, motion tracking, the more pixels you have in the image, the more that After Effects or whatever software that you have, the more information it has to create more tracking points. You can still do the same thing with 1080p as far as like motion tracking, 3D tracking goes, but for certain specific things, you may have to do like 5 different angles of that same shot in 1080p just to see which one like After Effects can receive more pixel and more information from. Now, another reason why you should get a 4K camera if you can afford it is when it comes to creating different camera angles. If you shoot a lot of interviews, if you film say talking head stuff like for YouTube where you're creating a tutorial, it's nice to be able to punch in for those really critical moments where you want to give very important information, and then you can punch back out, something that a lot of people do. Now take that 4K image and put it onto a 1080p timeline or a 1440p timeline. You'll be able to scale the image a little bit more than you would with just a pure 1080p image, right? So if you're like scaling into say 150% with 1080p footage, depending on the lighting and depending on what's going on in the background, something like this where there's nothing happening, it's just me talking, you can get away with it because I'm in a controlled environment with the lighting. But if you were, to shoot like maybe a wedding or an event, maybe it's like an indie film where you don't have control over the lighting, you have whatever is being given to you. In that regards, you may find it extremely difficult to maintain the image quality. If you're really punching in, you might lose information, or you might start to see things that just don't look appealing to the eye. So what I'll do is I'll put a link up here and also down below to the film itself. You don't have to watch all of it, just skim through. I'll put a time code here. Just set the time code to that point in your browser, and everything from that point on is basically 1080p. There's no 4K footage. You can watch the whole thing if you want, but if you really just want to see and do the pixel peeping and do the resolution test on like a 1080p monitor and a 4K monitor, please feel free to do so. That way it gives you an idea of like you can use 1080p footage and upscale it. The one thing I will say is on that specific day I had the grace of nature and the universe, as I couldn't have asked for better lighting for better weather. So if you are upscaling up, just be aware, if you don't have the best lighting, then you may run into just like image quality degradation, artifacting, banding, all those nasty things that you don't want. So check out the film below. That's it for me today, friends. If you have any questions, leave them down below in the comment section. Subscribe to my YouTube channel so you're notified of new information and new videos coming out. Like the video if you liked it, and remember that every day you have an opportunity to create your experience and to write and tell your own story. My name is David Lee, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.
Of these